Hi, my name is Lorraine of Grateful Prayer, thankfulheart.com, and I'm really excited to do an author interview. I'm with Jack Sikora, and Jack just recently released his first book, The Bigger Picture. So Jack, how about you introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Jack. I am 27 now. I think I'll be 28 in October. Um, I never thought I'd be introduced as an author before. I buy and sell autographs. It's a full-time job. I grew up in New Jersey. I now live just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I have two golden doodles, Josh and Quincy, who occupy a lot of my time. So they're still puppies and they're a handful, but I love them. And I enjoy playing golf, hanging out with friends, swimming, normal stuff we kids do. So
Awesome, awesome. So can you tell us what inspired you to write The Bigger Picture?
so I never thought I would ever be writing a book. And I have a fairly interesting story. And once I kind of once I got out of that season that I was in, I was kind of sitting there thinking about what to do with what I just went through. I thought about a couple of things. I thought about a podcast. I thought about, I coached for a little while in basketball and kind of got a feel for if that was where I was supposed to be next. And God he wouldn't let me shake the idea of writing a book. And, in Sikora fashion, we're stubborn. I argued with him. I was like, I don't write. I almost failed English multiple times. I've never been good at grammar or writing. I don't read for fun. Like everything about writing a book was off-putting to me. But I came to the conclusion. I was like, all right, like if you say so, I'll do it. And I just started laboring through the process. It took me about a year to write. And then once it was done, it was kind of, it was all fun after that. The hardest part was definitely writing it.
Oh, that's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so the book is basically a time capsule of my life. I started off when I'm about 16. I briefly touch on my childhood, but it starts around when I was 16 up until really the last maybe 2 years ago when I was 25 or so. And it's just, a very raw, authentic, accurate depiction of my relationship with my mom, my walk with God in the middle of it, her battle with ALS. I lost one of my best friends in a car accident while she was going through all that. The addictions I struggled with when I was trying to figure out if God was real, if God was good, if I convinced myself, if I made the whole thing up, everything in between. And I just kind of poured my heart out onto pages, and the response has been incredible so far with people reaching out. And I never thought that people would be able to relate to what I went through. And I mean, it's been nationwide. A lot of people I've never even met before. So it's been really cool to see how this book has, kind of reached people.
I think it's pretty awesome when you say that God just kind of wanted you to do this and you pursued it. And I know because I've read the book, I think it has a huge potential to help many, many people. So your title of your book is The Bigger Picture. Would you share the significance of the title?
Yeah, so I reference the title a lot of times throughout the book, and I don't know if it necessarily has one specific meaning of what it meant to me. Every time I found myself in a situation, some that I never thought I would be in before, it always kind of pointed back to something bigger than me was always the answer. I know that there was a time where I talk about it in the book where I was, I wasn't sleeping well. I was having anxiety attacks, and I would just I kept sitting there. I was like, if God is so good, like I wouldn't be going through all this. But what I could see in that moment was just like a small corner piece of the puzzle. And I never really had like a full picture of, I mean, I can look back now and I can, I have a better view of everything that I went through. But like a lot of times in these moments that like we often look at God and we're like, why is this happening? Like, this isn't what it's supposed to look like. I thought this was all going to be roses and flowers. And, you know, everything's supposed to be clean and not messy, and you know, all this stuff. I obeyed you. Why are you punishing me? And I had such like a warped view of what God wanted for me, what God was actually like, and I only had like the small section of the thing. So one of the reasons I picked this title was because you're able to look back and see that, you know, it may not have been how I would have drawn it up, but I think once you get, you know, you keep getting all these different pieces of the puzzle, and then you start to see something bigger that, you know, in that moment you weren't able to see.
Well, that's really so true. We go through hard times, and um, the picture, God doesn't always make it clear for us when we're in it. And I love how you were able to have that perspective when you came out of it. And I can see why the bigger picture is really a appropriate title.
Yeah.
So one of the unique things about your memoir is the span of time that it covers. You know, you're a young man still, and you've experienced some huge losses and struggles. What are some of the ways that you've processed this?
So it all depends on which area of I guess what aspect of life that we're talking about. I'm very big on a holistic view of God. I don't believe that God just, you know, wants your act cleaned up, or you know, just wants the spiritual realm. I think it's psychological. I think it's mental. I think it's physical. I think it's emotional. I think it's relational. I think there's a lot of components that go into you know, just us as humans. We're the most complex things that have ever been created, and rightfully so. So when I think about that, it's how do I explain this? Um, Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
I just wondering some of the ways. Now, obviously, you will go on and continually, but I'm wondering how you processed after you look
Oh,
back and.
right. So one of the things that I did when so I'll give you an example. After my mom passed, one of the things I had to do was come to grips with what actually happened. My mom had ALS. I watched her basically lose all physical ability in front of me in my early to mid 20s. And it destroyed my mental for years. But when I moved down here, it would have been really easy for me to sit here and just kind of be like, oh, everything, you know, it's all in the past, like move forward, just enjoy what's ahead of you. And I got to the point I was like, I don't know if we're really healed if we don't actually like put the work in to go through what happened to us. So one of the things I did was like I remember before I knew anybody down here really, like I sat in my room on like random Tuesday and Wednesday nights, and I just sat there and I was basically talking to myself and talking to God, and I was like, this is what actually happened. You know, I didn't talk to my mom for a couple of years, and those are years that, you know, looking back, I wish I had, but in that moment I couldn't. Like I was angry, I was bitter, I didn't want anything to do with it really. So I had to get super honest with, you know, where I was, the things that I did, the effects that I still carry of some of the things that I did. You know, just different relationships that kind of molded me and shaped me into who I was. And you know, I think God can only heal what you show him. And I think a lot of us kind of walk around and just be like, oh no, like we'll just leave it under the rug. Like I'm fine. I slap on a smile. And you know, I was out of the season that hurt the most, but I thought to myself, I was like, to go someplace further than where I'm at, I need to really dig into what happened to me and some of the things I did and why I did them, and you know why some of them why I kept repeating them, and some of them why I didn't keep repeating them. And you know, I asked myself a lot of tough questions, and you know, I found some unfriendly answers, and I was like, all right, I need to pay attention to this. So it was just a lot of self exploration, and you know, I really got to know me in the process of it, and you know, that's part of the reason I'm at the point where I am right now.
Well, you know, I'm really impressed because it's really easier, and many people do make the decision to just move forward and not deal with things.
Hmm.
And it's not wise. It comes back somehow, and it certainly does affect all aspects of our life. And you really took the initiative, and I'm sure it's by God's leading, but you really did decide to dig deep down and really look at yourself, look at your heart, and You know, that is really something for a young man to do, because you know, many of us with a lot of years beyond you still struggle with those things.
Yeah, it wasn't fun by any means. Like I hated the whole process.
Painful.
But like big things were in front of me. Like I knew like eventually how important marriage is going to be for me whenever I find a girl that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And
Mhm.
like I knew there was a lot of stuff that I had to deal with before I even thought about like getting into a serious relationship. A lot of those things started with the relationship with my mom. A lot of those things started, I had a pornography addiction for like a decade. And
Mhm.
like I had to address that. You don't just
Mhm.
have something in your mind like that for a decade and then just like, oh, it's gone now. Like, no, these things have lasting effects that, you know, you need to be conscious of and you need to deal with, and you know, all this other stuff. And I mean, now I'm at a place where I can talk about them because it's part of my story now. And
Mhm.
I'm almost at like a place of overflow where like everything that I went to is being poured into other people now. But I mean, for a while, it wasn't like this. Like I'm don't claim to be a finished product, but I mean, when I get to look back and see where I used to be and to where I am now, I mean, it's worth celebrating.
Well, that growth is such an encouragement to many, many people. And so I'm assuming that you share some of this struggle in your book.
Oh yeah, I get in the thick of it. I talk about a pornography addiction. I talk about when I couldn't sleep, how I would not like overdose, but like over drink so I could get a full night's sleep. Because for a while I would just like, you know, during the day I was fine. I was working, I was seeing people, I was keeping up with, you know, the speed of life or whatever. But like as soon as the lights went off and like I was left by myself, my head hit the pillow and like I wouldn't fall asleep right away. And you know, you're just sitting there and I'm thinking, I was like, how much time do I have left with my mom? I'm not going to get this dance with her at my wedding that I always wanted. She's not going to get to meet my kids. And like all these thoughts were just crippling me.
Mhm.
Um, and that's like, I was just trying to basically take the hurt away from what I was going to. And I mean, looking back, it's easy to see that it only made things worse. But like in the moment, like I'm not gonna pretend that it didn't help me sleep or whatever, because it did. I would pass out, and then the next day I'd be like, all right, let's do it again because it hurt a little bit less.
That had to be exhausting.
Very, yeah,
Emotionally, yes.
yeah, emotionally, mentally. It was like probably I don't know, maybe over a little over 2 years of doing this, but I mean, it felt like forever. I mean, there was no hope at the end of the tunnel for a while. There was just
Mhm.
like I a lot of days I just woke up and I just didn't want to do it anymore. And it just, you
Yeah.
know, when you sit there and like, you know, what's the driving force is like, well, my mom's still here, so I have to take care of her. But like I wasn't really living for much. Like I wasn't having a good time. I had nothing really going for me. And, you know, it's easy to be in that moment and just like have a dull view. And you know, the things that I was speaking to myself were my own thoughts. Like I wasn't pouring in, you know, great sermons or anything. Like I wasn't reading encouraging books. Like there was, you know, there wasn't anything combating the thoughts that I was having about myself and life and God and all this stuff. So I just wallowed in my own pity for
Mhm.
years. And you know, if you get to the bottom, you can get comfortable there and set up shop. And that's kind of what I did for a while.
Wow. Well, we've already kind of covered some of this, but I'll go with this question even still. Relationship with a mom is one of the most influentials in our lives, and yours has gone through many changes. You write of the deep emotions and pain in that relationship, yet you press on. And you've already started, and is there any more that you wanted to add about that continuing? You know, you hit rock bottom, you were exhausted, and
Mhm.
where did you get that impetus to just keep pressing on?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that like the relationship you have with your parents shapes you for your entire life if you don't get to a point where you like take a step back and deal with it, because you're very impressionable, you know, from a certain age, and you pick up the habits of your parents, whether intentional or unintentional. Um, and one of the things that I found out about myself as I, you know, learned more about myself was my ability to like have a relationship with a girl. It sounds, you know, cliche or lame or whatever you want to call it at first, but like I really sat there and thought about it. I was like, my trust issues are so deep,
Wow.
and it's just because of like what I saw happen to my parents' marriage growing up. And like, I never really thought anything of it when I was a teenager, this, that, and the third. I was like, oh, like, I'm not going to be anything like what I grew up watching. And that's still something that I strive for, is to have an overflowingly incredible marriage that people can look at and be like, this is what it's supposed to look like.
Mm.
Um, Before that, like I found like these things just creeping in, and all the trust issues, and it's just like, oh well, all the what ifs. What if she leaves me? What if she isn't actually that interested? If she's just here because it's easy, or it's financially secure, or like all these things, and I'm just like, I'm a mess relationally. And I was like, I took some time off, and I was like, I really need to deal with some of the stuff that I was kind of just handed. And that's what I started doing. And now, I'm still looking for her. I'm still very, very hopeful that I'm gonna, find my wife that I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with. But I'm at a place where I can, my head's on straight, and I don't feel like I'm gonna, bring a bunch of baggage into the relationship that should have been handled beforehand.
That's really huge. That's really huge. I know many parts of the book, but one that just resonated with me. I thought it was super sweet, and maybe you could share a little bit about your pop, and your relationship with him, and the influence that he has had on your life.
Mm-hmm. So I call him Pop. That's my dad's dad, my grandfather. He's Jack Senior. My dad's Jack Junior, and I'm Jack the Third. Um, and we had a really special relationship, but I didn't fully appreciate it until after he was gone. I mean, we used to go to baseball games growing up, and occasionally he'd go back there and throw the wiffle ball with us. We'd watch Jeopardy every night and whatever, and my mom would make us ice cream, and I mean, those are some of my fondest memories. When everything was kind of really messy with my parents' divorce and everything, I had just gotten my license. I can remember going over there like every day of the week. And like that was safe. That was home. I'd go over there, she'd make me ice cream. Me and Pop would go back and forth with the Jeopardy questions and see who would win more. We got to see the Phillies win the World Series in 2008. That's who I sat with when Lidge threw that final pitch and we won. But it wasn't until, and I talk about this in the book. It wasn't until my mom got sick that like I kind of saw a different side of him that, it's really hard to put into words, because I guess my dad was probably one of the ones to get hurt the most in my parents' divorce. But my pop, he basically like, he didn't shun my mom. Like, our family is not like picture perfect by any means. And I'm not going to go into all of it just because I don't want to reopen all the wounds and everything. But like, it got to the point where like me, him, my cousin Billy, and my mom would like have regular Chick-fil-A dates when like my mom was first diagnosed and he was getting older. And he just like showed me what love really looked like. He left all of his grandkids' money in his will, which is something like I didn't even think of. And then come to find out, like that's actually in scripture. He's like, a good inheritance you leave for your kids' kids. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I've never even heard this verse before. And he's like one step ahead of me, already doing this. So yeah, just looking back, I was a little too young to, kind of see all the men of God and character that he brought to the table. But getting to look back, I mean, he was intentional. He had a servant's heart. He always would try and convince me and my cousins to go to church. He'd offer to buy us breakfast. He's like, you don't get breakfast if you don't go to church. And, a lot of times that was why we went. Mm-hmm. He loved my grandmother so well until her final breath. I mean, if I could have half the marriage that I got to watch on the latter half of their life, I mean, that's everything that I want.
That is truly a blessing, a heritage that he's left for you. And I'm sure that you will hold to that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So there's many things that I'm sure that you learned while you were writing the bigger picture. Can you share maybe a couple of things that stand out the most? And again, I'm sure that as time goes on and you process even later and later, you're going to feel that you've learned more and more. But can you just share something now?
Yeah. So in the actual writing process, I learned that I still don't like to write. It's not really a surprise. I didn't enjoy the writing process. But one of the things I learned in, I guess, my biggest growth season And it's the simplest and one of the greatest things that Jesus ever said. He's like, everybody's like, what are the greatest commandments? He's like, love God, and then followed up, he's like, love your neighbor as yourself. And I was like, all right, cool. Everybody's like, easy enough. We've heard this before, but like, if you don't focus in on that back half of just like, oh, love your neighbor, and come like, love your neighbor with as much as you have in yourself. Like, if you don't understand what it means to love yourself, you're never going to be able to fully love your neighbor. And I grew up in church, and like I missed this. And I started exploring. I was like, all right, what does it mean to actually love yourself? And it's not just like, me going to get a massage or going to play golf and taking, like, I take time for myself to like relax and do all that stuff. But like, it's the way that you talk about yourself. It's the thoughts you have about yourself. It's, what are you looking at on a computer when nobody's around? Like, I started to develop integrity, which is like, a real character traits. Like, what do you like when nobody's watching you? And that's like when I really started to grow, was when nobody was looking at me. So like, everybody now is just like, how did you get from here all the way over to here? And it's just like when nobody was looking at me, like that's when all these things took place. Like, I think if we're less concerned with what people think about us, and we actually like focus on being everything that God called us to be, which is so much greater than like what we teach in church. Like, we should go so much harder on like the plan that God actually wants for your life. Like, he wants to give us life and life abundantly. Like, this life is not supposed to be boring. This is supposed to be exciting. Your relationships are supposed to thrive. You're supposed to bear fruit. So there's so much leftovers that like everybody you come in contact with can't help but see something radical taking place in your life. And I like, it's so wild to think back that like I grew up being taught everything there is in the Bible, and just like I missed so much of it. There was so much meat left on the bone, and I was like, all right, like this is cool, but like it didn't click until I got older, and like what it actually means to like know Jesus and like have this walk. And it changed my life. Like, I'm never going to be able to live life the same that I used to after learning all this.
Well, I absolutely believe that this testimony, this story that you have of that transformation, when we get serious with God and we just turn to Him, I think that is where your book is just going to be used in so many lives. It just warms my heart to the core.
If I may, I have one more thing that just popped into my mind. It's like one of the other driving factors of the book. I don't want to say I grew up in like not like a moralistic environment, but like I knew it was always like grace, not works. But like you still feel like a responsibility, like you're underachieving if your works don't match a certain standard. So like when I would fall short, I would always be like, oh, like I suck right now. Like I'm just gonna sit over here and almost punish myself. And it wasn't until I really started going through this, and this is the thing that actually kind of freed me from pornography. Was just like, He's so far less concerned with your habits than your heart. And it was just like, once you give God your heart, He'll change your habits. Like that's on the back burner. Like he wants the position of your heart to be towards Him. And I was like sitting there, I was like, why have I never heard this before? Like, I've been in church my whole life, and I've never heard that it's all about your heart posture and not like what flows out of that. And so it's all backwards. That's like the cool thing about God, is like, you think you know it, and then like it's like, no, it's opposite of everything that you think it's going to be. So I just like, it's weird that like the thing that freed me from the thing that I never thought I'd be able to break off was just spending time with God. It was just learning more about Him, and the miracle that I get to walk in, and look back and see who I used to be. And I'm just like, some of that stuff, it just turned into a turnoff. I was like, I don't even want this anymore. Like, it's in the past. Like, it's the old me. It's not there anymore.
So let me see if I can quote what you just said a few minutes ago. Was so powerful. Something about give God your heart and He will change your behavior.
Yeah. I think the saying that Mike Todd used was, if you give God your heart, He'll change your habits.
Oh,
And
love
a lot of times in church, we get hung up on it's like, oh, he's doing this, they're doing this, he slept with her, and like this, that, and the third. And like we look at people like, you're so this, or I would never do that, or my kids are so like we do all this comparison and judgment, all this stuff. And it's just like it's never been about this. Like at the foot of the cross, it's an even playing field, no matter how many times you messed up. And I just think like if we honed in on this more, I think more people would actually like experience the freedom that Jesus gives.
the truth, and the truth will set us free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Another thing that played a huge part of these rough years were your friends. And they were there through
Mm-hmm.
difficult times, and they provided strength and encouragement. And so I wanted to ask you, what are some tangible ways that you could say friends can help when life is hard?
Yeah. So when I go through this story, I mean, there's like probably like 3 or 4 people that I really just like. I don't know if I would be sitting here if it wasn't for them.
Mm.
I have a couple really, really close friends, my cousin Billy, my friend Isaiah, my friend Dave, and a couple others. But I mean, those were the people that were there to listen to me talk about the real things that I was going through.
Mm.
It wasn't like I knew people were always like, "Hey, I'm here if you need anything." But like, if you don't have that relationship where like you can talk about not wanting to wake up the next morning, where you don't have that like that type of comfort with somebody. I mean, those are the friends that are just like that's exactly what I needed at that time. They weren't telling me I was being a moron. Like I knew that myself. You didn't have to tell me that I was making stupid decisions. Like, I needed somebody to sit there and just listen to me and be like, I don't know what you're going through, but like I'm not going anywhere. And just to have the stability of just like regardless of what comes my way, I know there's people in my corner that like regardless of how stupid I act that night, or what I say to somebody, like I know they're not going to leave. And like I think that's like a depiction of what true love actually looks like. Like it's not like, hey, if you act right, I'm going to be here for you. Like it's like, no, I love you as a person, like through and through. And regardless of what happens, like I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to show up. I'm going to drive when it's inconvenient. I'm going to stay on phone calls late when you want to vent about the same thing, even though you said it yesterday, and you want to do it again. I mean, these are things that happen to me, and I don't shy away from giving them credit. I mean, they were everything and more that I needed at the time.
I'm sure that friendship will go on forever.
Absolutely.
Forever. Yeah. Well, obviously your friends and most important, but I love the when you mentioned about your dogs, Dodger, Wrigley, Fenway. I love dogs too, and I know how emotionally attached I am to them. I know, they're there to give you a hug or just.
Mm-hmm.
So just share a little bit about that and how they really helped comfort you.
So as much as like I credit my friends and I love my friends, like I'm not the type of person to like grab one of my homies and just like start crying on them and hugging them, being all gross, and like that's not my personality. Yeah. But I mean my dogs were that for me, especially Fenway. He was my buddy. But like any time like I just didn't want to do anything and I was just down, like I'd go downstairs and I'd lay on the floor for hours, and they would just like, they knew, like they were smart, they knew me very well. Yeah. And they would just like circle up around me, and I'd hold 1, 2, or 3 of them at the same time. And they were the tangible comfort that I needed in that season. Dodger passed in August of 2018, and then Wrigley and Fenway passed about a couple weeks apart in the spring of 2019, and that was right before I lost my mom and my best friend Sarah. And I don't think it was random for that to happen. One of the things that I always thought about when I was laying awake at night was, if I'm not going to have Fenway the day that my mom passes, what am I going to do? So when he passed, and I think it was April, when he passed, I kind of just like, I got real quiet, and it was just me and God at that point. And it kind of forced my hand to be like, I'm going to be the one to get you through this. It's not going to be anybody else. It's not going to be your friends. It's not going to be your dogs. Like it's going to be me. And I didn't know it at the time, but he's like, I'm going to show up and show off. And, I told a story to you earlier when I spoke at my mom's funeral. It was the most peaceful my soul was in my entire life was the month that like my best friend died unexpectedly in a car crash and my mom passed a couple weeks later, right after, you know, Wrigley and Fenway and Dodger all passing and my mind being tormented for years. And it's just like for me to be able to get up at my mom's funeral and just testify of like what God did in my life. And like I got to see my mom's relationship kind of just built back brick by brick. And it's to go from not being able to have a conversation with her and the sporadic texts on holidays, and then just like to where we got to at the end. Like I always I, perfect, but like it was always worth it. And that's one of the things that like I try and tell people. And you know, I have these conversations and people are always like, you don't know what they did to me. I don't always know what they did to you, but like I know what I went through. And like if God can put that relationship back together, like there's no doubt in my mind he can do it for you. Like we were done. Like I didn't have her number saved, like nothing. Like she was, if she never texted me again, there was a point in my life I would have moved on, I would have been fine. But that's, God had other plans for me. So
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that was huge. I mean, two things come to my mind is that for any person, much less a young person, you really did face some tremendous loss. You know, you talked about your dogs, you talked about, you know, even prior to the loss of your mom when she passed away, but you dealt with a lot of lost memories and things that could have been that weren't. And then your friend and yeah, I mean, yet you, giving God the credit, there was something there that still propelled you forward.
yeah, and some days it doesn't always feel like that. I talk about my mom really easily.
Mhm.
I talk about my dogs a little bit better. I have a hard time talking about Sarah. She was one of the few people that, you know, never turned her back on me. And you know, she had every right to stop talking to me with the way I was acting, this, that, and the third. And like, it's just, I mean, she was literally like one of my best friends, like one of the few people I talk to every single day. And she was younger than me, and just like we spent every day of college together. And it was the day before I was going to see her for a friend's wedding, and like we are all planning this. And you know, I like to dress crazy, and I kept showing her like my different crazy outfits that I was going to wear, and she's like, you're more of a girl than I am. And like it's just like one of those things that like I don't know if I'll ever get the answer to why that happened. Or you know, I mean, she was 24 years old. It's not something that I can just like go around and, you know, be like, oh, God has a great plan. Like I don't know what the plan is for this. Like I can look back and see everything that happened with my mom. And yeah, my mom was 60 years old. She lived a life. And but I mean, I'd be lying if I said that there weren't a lot of days where like I look at a picture of Sarah. I mean, there's one in every room of my house basically, where I just like I don't look at her and I'm just like this still feels like there's a piece of me missing. Like it's you know, all of our friend group always hangs out all the time, and it just like it always feels one short. And I've got to see, you know, some awesome things happen through that. One of my best friends got married to one of her friends, which is really cool. Another one of my friends started dating a girl indirectly because of Sarah. I'm really close with her family. They're basically like a second family to me now. And like I've made a lot of friends because of it. It's just like at the end of the day, I think if we could all trade it back, I think we probably would. But I mean, I'll get the answer to that question when I get there. I you know, I've seen God do too much to not trust him with that. So
Well, your attitude, and when I say positive attitude, I don't mean that you have conjured that up from yourself. I mean, obviously it is from God and the wonderful transformations that he's done and the leading that he's done. But I'm impressed with, you know, your whole outlook.
yeah, I appreciate it. I tell people I was like I'm really not all like I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, I have a cruel sense of humor. Like I'm not this picture perfect Sunday school Christian boy that like everybody may think by reading this. Like I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. I have gross conversations with with the intent of moving forward, because I think that the church kind of lacked on that for, as much as I've seen anyway. But that's my goal, is to just like kind of represent what Jesus looks like. It's not like this far-fetched, super white Christianity, Americanized. Like it's not any of this stuff. And especially for people my age, I think we grew up in, being forced to go to church, and it's kind of like when you're forced to play an instrument growing up, it's like you don't want to do it anymore. It's not fun when it's forced. And it's just like it almost caused like a sense of rebellion, and mine just came a little bit later than everybody else's. And I know I'm young, but I'm here to just kind of tell people that like all the stuff that you're dealing with, like you don't have to carry that. You weren't designed to like.
I think we have a little of an audio problem there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, I also wanted to say, in the back of your book, you talk a little bit elsewhere, some resources and some things you came across that really helped you in processing and in your journey. Can you share a little about that?
Yeah, so the stuff at the back of the book is basically a combination of stuff that I watched or listened to when I wanted nothing to do with God. And then when I was like kind of curious, and I was like, all right, maybe there's something to this. And then, when I kind of came back to God and I was still dealing with, the onslaught of problems that I still had to deal with.
Right.
So it's a combination of them. It's a couple series that really, really changed my life. One's called Relationship Goals by Mike Todd. It kind of highlighted the importance of singleness and, kind of knowing who you are before you get into partnership with somebody else. I think a lot of times, even in marriages, everybody likes to blame the other person. If they would just do this, well, you don't know how they talk to me, and this, that, and the third. It's just like it's more of a singleness problem than a relationship problem. So I got to learn about myself a lot in that, what I want in somebody else, what dating should look like, what an engagement should look like, what marriage should look like, all the way down to like what it's supposed to look like generations to come. Wow. Other stuff was just comforting, just to listen to people that I looked up to talk about some of the same struggles I was having. There's a couple rappers I listened to, Andy Mineo and Lecrae. They're very open about some of the addictions they had, and Andy lost his mom, and he kind of had a wrestle with God for a while. And these are people that like the Christian community likes to put on the platform, and it's just like, hey, you're not allowed to mess up at the position that you're at. Like you're supposed to be this, that, and the third. And they're just like, nah, like this still happens to me all the time, and like this is where I'm at right now. And that's what I needed in that season. I didn't need somebody to go up there and tell me what to do. And it was more of just like the relatability from somebody else's struggle and vulnerability of what their life looks like. It's just like, I've been doing this a lot longer than you, and it still looks like this. Like it's not this picture perfect thing that social media likes to present to us. So there's just a bunch of there's sermons. I think there's a couple books, and then some music that just helped me out in different seasons where I was at, and provoked some thoughts that I hadn't thought about before, and kind of pushed me further to explore different areas of my life.
Awesome. You say in your book, and you said here that you've written it for others, and what do you hope readers will take away from your book, The Bigger Picture?
So I'm very upfront about this. I didn't write this book for church people, and I didn't write this for like non-church people. I wrote this for people who have been hurt, who have gone through something that seems bigger than what they could possibly imagine. I know way too many people who have lost children, which is a club that nobody would wish on anybody. That's arguably one of the worst things that can happen to you on earth. And it's weird to see the struggles that I went through looking up towards my mom versus a parent looking down. But I've seen a lot of that kind of bridge, where people can understand my thoughts towards God, and just kind of like the wrestling match I had with him. Even though we had a totally different circumstances, a lot of the thoughts I've found out are the same. It's just like, why is this happening? Like, you said you love me. You said you had great plans for me. Like, this plan shouldn't include me not having, getting to see my child grow up. And it's been, I don't want to say cool, but it's been changing, I guess, to have some of these conversations with people who have lost children. I've had conversations with both of Sarah's parents about this, and what the book meant to them. And that's like, I mean, if it didn't get any further, like the conversations I had with them, just like, I mean, that was everything that I wanted and more, just to
Wow.
listen to how much that it meant from them for me to talk about Sarah, and just everything I went through and how important she was to me.
Mm.
But it's been wild to see this book just kind of, it's multi-generational. It's breaching age gaps, which is really cool.
Yep.
I've gotten more responses from the generation above me. But I've gotten some from people my age who kind of had like a rough handout, and they never really deal with it, and you just kind of walk around in dysfunction because you don't really know what else to do. Nobody teaches you how to dig up what hurt you and then give it to God. Like, that's not something that comes naturally for people. Like, we just harbor it. We don't tell anybody because it's shameful and you don't want people to look at you differently. And we just go around living in dysfunction. I think if you don't heal from what cut you, like, you just go around and bleeding on people who had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that, I wanted to just kind of put my heart out on pages. And, it's been incredible to see some of the reactions from people and the different responses and the different pains that I've gotten to share with other people. Some I've never even met before.
Well, this is not about your book, but I think it's a pretty interesting thing about you personally is your business. I see behind you your kinship business, and just tell us a little bit about that, because it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so I own my own business. I was kind of forced to go part-time when I found out my mom got sick, just because I was going to have to rearrange my schedule and help take care of her, and kind of figure all that stuff out. So I was like, all right, what do I do now? And I've been playing with autographs since I was a kid. I think my first one, I don't know, I think my mom held me and I got Kurt Schilling, and like I was 4 years old or something.
Wow.
But I've always had a love for autographs, and I started to sell them in college a little bit, and I made some side money, this, that, and the third. And then when I went part-time from the place I was working a full-time job at, I thought to myself, I was like, I've seen everybody else do this, and like I think I can do this. So I launched my own business, Kinship Collectibles. I think it's going to be 3 years in June. So next month I'll have for 3 years. But basically, I buy and sell autographs full-time. Sports, historical, entertainment, presidential, you name it. Reagan, George Washington, Edison, Disney, Martin Luther King, Babe Ruth. Anything with ink on it, I dabble with. And I enjoy it too. It gives me great flexibility. It's lucrative. It gives me freedom to, control my schedule the way I want it to. It's very seasonal too. So like the winters, I work a little bit more just because people like to buy stuff in the winter. But it's good because the summer I get to relax a little bit more and, spend some time with people. But it's one of the best decisions I've ever made was, I mean, the freedom that comes with owning your own thing. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, obviously it takes a lot of skill and a lot of talent, but it's so unique and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's fun. You meet a lot of people on the way. I've always been kind of a history nerd. It started when I was in high school. I kind of got fascinated with World War II and like learning all the random, generals and people in charge and, all that stuff. And they kind of like meshed with autographs. And then I started learning who like Vivian Lee and Jackie Gleason and like all these random people that people my age don't have any idea who any of these people are. But I liked the Three Stooges growing up, so I started looking at all their autographs, and then I got really into the presidents.
Wow.
And then I started going to like inventors and Einstein, and then it switched over to like Martin Luther King, Marilyn Monroe. Like I just started dabbling with everything. So now I'm all over the spectrum, writers, Ernest Hemingway, like you name it. Like I'm all over the board, but I love it. You learn more. You can always learn something new in this industry, which is cool because I love learning things. It's one of my favorite things to do is to just like have random facts about people in history. And so I'm kind of a nerd in that sense, but I enjoy what I do, and that's, you can't put a price on that.
No, I think that is pretty awesome. Yeah. So if readers would like to connect with you, how might they go about that?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram's probably the thing I use the most. My handle is just my name, at Jack Sikora. It's very easy. I answer all my messages in a timely manner, I think. And a lot of people have done that since I dropped this book. I mean, I've gotten messages from people I've known for years, people I haven't spoken to in over a decade, people I don't even know, people from the ALS community. Just reaching out random, hey, I knew your mom from this, that, and the third, and I saw your video, and like, I'm super intrigued. Like, all these people dumping their trauma into my inbox, which I thought was wild, but I mean, why this? And people start talking about what hurt them, and then once you acknowledge the pain that you went through, it's then you can start to heal. You're really in a dangerous spot if you just like pretend a bunch of stuff didn't happen to you, because sooner or later it's going to show up in your relationships, whether you like it or not. So I'm a big advocate of people kind of digging up some of the stuff that hurt them, and then that kind of leads you to have a healthy and fruitful relationship.
We have talked about how the mental and the anguish and the anger and things, the emotions that you had gone through, but we didn't talk too much. And one of the things that just impressed me as a mom is that you really, you just grasped it, and you went as hard and as well as you could to spend time with your mom and do things with her and make those days that remained for her really special.
Yeah, sometimes I did. I'm not going to pretend that every day I was thrilled to go over there. There were a lot of days where I dreaded it. I was like in this little bubble of like wanting all of it to be over, but like I didn't want anything to happen to my mom at the same time. So it was just like I was stuck in this vortex of like these two things that, because I was 20 something years old. Like I was watching all of my friends have the time of their life. They're building their careers. They're making something of themselves, and I felt like I had to give everything up, and I couldn't move away. I never wanted to stay in Jersey. Like I've known that for a long time, and like I couldn't do any of that because I was like bitter about doing the right thing almost. I was like, I'm gonna do it because I know it's the right thing, but like I wasn't always happy about it. But there were other days where we really did have a great time. We went on a couple trips. My family, we went to Disney, and got to take my sister's kids down there and have a really special time down there. Me and my sisters went to the DR with my mom. That's that picture you see of me holding her at the beach, which is one of the best pictures I have with her.
Yeah.
And we knew that. I don't think we would have done half the stuff that we did if we didn't have a time clock, basically. So it was like a gift and a curse where you make the most of what you have, but like you're also not happy. You have to make the most of what you have. Like you want a normal amount of time with her, like you think you're getting.
Yeah. So much has happened, and you've grown so much, and just so many changes. And so, do you have any idea what the future looks like for you?
I mean, I have an idea. I went straight into a house. I didn't want to rent. I thought it was financially beneficial to go straight into a house. There's enough room for, a family to grow in this house. That's the reason I bought it. There's a basement, there's a pool. Like I went into it, basically telling myself, I was like, this is where you're going to start a family at. So that's the next big hurdle in my life, and it's not an easy one because it's it's easier for me to talk about the issues I have and what I have to pay attention to when I start dating, but like it's a whole nother ball game, like letting somebody occupy that space and like trusting that they're just not going to wake up one day and be like, no, I'm out. Like that's a huge fear of mine, and like I'm aware of it, but I mean, whoever I marry is gonna have their hands full. Like it's not gonna be like a light work. And that's one of the, I'm open about it. I don't want to portray that I'm like just because I'm out of a bad season that like I'm all put together now. Like there's I'm still human like everybody else. I still do stupid things. It's just like
Yeah.
instead of punishing myself for doing those stupid things, it's just like God's like, hey, come back. Like we're not going over there. Like you messed up, but like come on back. It's not like
Grace of God.
yeah, it's not what it used to be where I'm like, oh, like I suck. I gotta go take 3 days and punish myself before I can come back now. It doesn't work like that. And it just like it shows my relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It shows my friendships. Like, I mean, I have the best friends in the world. Like it's weird. There's a few people I still talk to from high school that I'm close to, but like the people I met in college are the people that, you know, my kids are going to play Little League with. Like it's those types of friendships that like, you know, their kids call me uncle. Like we're that close where like, it's just like a bunch of family extensions that I can't wait for. Like when we're all old, we're still going to be roasting each other like we do now. So I look forward to that.
Great, great. Well, there's so much more that we could talk. Your book, I just so recommend it to our listeners. The Bigger Picture, Jack Sikora. It's available now on Amazon. And Jack, it's been my privilege to sit and chat with you and get to know you a little bit more and see your heart and see and listen to your story and your testimony and the things that God has done and is capable of doing. I'm just so grateful for the time you took to meet up with me.
No, that was this was a lot of fun. We should do it again sometime.
I'd love to. I'd love to. All right. Keep in touch.
Love it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jack.
See ya.
Bye.